Corpse Factory is the most well-produced English visual novel I have ever read. That's a big statement, because unlike those who only read Japanese visual novels, I have a lot of English ones under my belt. If I had to give reasons as to why this visual novel outproduces its competitors, the OP gave me chills, high quality and moment-defining CGs, a fully voiced English cast, which almost never happens, especially for the length that Corpse Factory flaunts, and a gripping story that had me stay up until 2 AM just to finish. That's not to say there are not some issues with it, but it is certainly one of the best English visual novel experiences I've had in quite a while. Friends, family, and haters alike, I am Bruce, gone loose. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell, because that would be swell. Now let's talk about Corpse Factory. Whilst dinking around on Steam like I normally do, I decided to check out recently released visual novels. I hadn't done this in a while, as I had gone on a little bit of a hiatus from the genre, but Corpse Factory immediately caught my eye. An obscure website allows users to request a death. I've always wanted to play visual novel Death Note. $23 was a little bit steep, but I got paid when I bought it, so I figured what the hell, and dived right in. It starts with, as I said, an OP that gave me chills. But that doesn't do it justice. It reminded me of Evanescence's album The Open Door because of the focus on piano and string instruments, the gloomy overtone, and the singer's eerie melody. Seriously, go watch this OP on YouTube or their Steam page, it's awesome. Starting the game, you'll be dropped into a prologue that will set the tone for the entire game. It's pretty much the perfect length, and it does tie into the story in Act 1 later on, so you don't feel like you've wasted your time. Corpse Factory's tone-setting prologue reminds me a lot of Chaos Child, a visual novel which I adored, so we are off to a pretty good start. Act 1 is where we meet and are in perspective of the main character, Noriko Kurosawa, a 20-year-old office-working gothic Lolita. Alright, I can work with this. The first act introduces all the characters pretty naturally and takes its time developing each of them. It is a bit shocking how quickly the first twist comes in at about like 40 minutes into the visual novel, but it also makes it unique in a way I haven't experienced before. This act ends up being 5 hours long in total, which was shocking to me because I haven't read an English visual novel that long in ages, let alone it be just the first act. The psychological horror elements of this visual novel shine the most in this act, and I would argue we're in the perspective of the most interesting character due to her complicated passion and interesting life circumstances. This culminates in the ending of Act 1 that I thought was really interesting. Unfortunately, Act 2 switches perspectives to another character involved with Noriko, simply named Kojiro. I personally don't mind perspective switching visual novels, but what I do mind is pretty much pretending the ending to Act 1 never happened. I get there is a short time skip, but it kinda undermines the thing you just read 5 minutes ago. Nonetheless, this is where the game sort of begins to fall off. Whilst Kojiro himself is not a terrible character, the plot feels a lot messier. Rival organizations and obvious twists leading into what I think was an extremely stupid ending to this act really dampened my previously high expectations. I still enjoyed it, mind you, but at this point I was beginning to think that compared to Act 1, Act 2, and the rest of the game, was a major step back. Act 3 is even shorter and presents a twist literally everybody saw coming. It briefly follows Noriko's best friend, Aoi Sato. This act is pretty underwhelming and short, but it does feature a confrontation that has been 3 acts in the making. The final act, returning back to Noriko, is the true final confrontation of Corpse Factory. Noriko confronts a part of herself that was born about a year ago due to circumstances, and that's pretty much it. To be honest, it's great seeing her more determined and motivated because she becomes a bit of a drag in Act 2. So the final act is over. So the game's over, right? Nope. You still have a bonus ending featuring side characters, an epilogue for Kojiro, 3 additional endings, and even a mini parody of scenes that occur in the game. I won't go into too much details about those, but what I can say is, the mini parody is fucking hilarious. The first 5 hours of Corpse Factory are the best English visual novels have to offer. After that, the story ends up becoming a bit disheveled due to the subsequent chapters being much shorter and less focused. It feels like Act 1 was written before they planned the other acts, leading to an amazing isolated first part of the visual novel and an afterthought second half. An important thing to note is that the prologue and Act 1 together are 5 hours long. Acts 2, 3, the final act, as well as the bonus ending, Kojito's epilogue, the 3 other endings, and the parody spin-off combined are only 3 more hours of content after that. This seems terribly unbalanced. I realize no English developer has the budget to make a bunch of 5-hour-long, fully voiced chapters, but the pacing post Act 1 is abysmal. The choices given are pretty inconsequential. They are only given during the first act, and I don't believe they actually affect how the game ends, though I could be wrong. The reason I'm not sure is because I completed the game and got ending B, which kinda seems like the default ending, and afterwards, they just let you pick the other 2 endings from the title screen. So this indicates to me that ending B, again, is the default ending, or the game developers did not think the tiny scenes for each choice were worth playing the entire game over for each ending, so instead, they let you jump right into the other endings. If that is the case, I certainly appreciate it. Corpse Factory is no doubt the best looking English visual novel I have ever played. The sprites, backgrounds, and text box are extremely crisp. The CGs are beautiful, plentiful, and never disappoint. And even the UI is clean. If I had to give one critique, for the amount of CGs they have, there's a lack of character sprites. Many times a character's voice line was expressing one emotion, but their sprite was representing another. Usually with English visual novels, I find a hard time getting into the voices of characters, partly because I'm only used to Japanese voice acting, and partly because English visual novels typically don't have a large budget, so the voice actors chosen reflect that. However, I found all of the voices fit the characters very well. I didn't find myself cringing at all for the most part. Tomoe can be a bit much, what with her teenage girl voice, but otherwise, Corpse Factory has the best English voice acting I've seen thus far. Not including the OP, the soundtrack was large enough to not feel repetitive and had an overall gloomy feel that fit the game to a T. There weren't many memorable tracks that I will think of about a month from now, but the intense moments of Corpse Factory were pushed to the next level due to some tracks. I mean, come on, you know shit is about to get real when you hear background chanting in your soundtrack. This game runs as smooth as butter, and most importantly, has windowed full screen, which these days is pretty much a must-have for me in visual novels. The skip function doesn't lag at all, which is always something I check because it annoys the fuck out of me if it does. The settings are pretty bare, but it's not really too much of an issue for me personally. But if you do like to mute some characters, this game does not have that. Overall, the prologue and first act are extremely strong. Being fully voiced in English is a huge incentive to try this game out for English visual novel fans. This is without a doubt the highest quality English visual novel I've ever played, and the non-high school setting may appeal to many. The downsides, however, as previously mentioned, the story becomes a bit of a mess after the first act. The plot twists are extremely obvious, and the price of $26 Canadian or $21 USD may be a steep price for an 8-hour experience. With all that in mind, I would certainly recommend the game if you are looking for a voiced English visual novel experience. If the price dissuades you, you may want to get it on sale. However, that likely won't happen for quite a while, as Corpse Factory is a new title, and considering the production value, I personally recommend buying it anyway to support English visual novel developers. That's all for today, guys. If you watched to the end, I appreciate you, and I will see you next time.